Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to With Love, Jenny. And boy, I tell you what, I am loving this series. I know it sounds kind of depressing. If you look at the last, I don't even know how many episodes we've had, because some actually became 2 episodes. If you missed it, our last 2 episodes, part 1 and part 2, I interviewed someone special to me who went through a pretty serious opioid addiction. She became a young mother. She got sober. She relapsed. She became a mother again and was doing great. And then stress kind of took over and she relapsed. And that was the one that was her bottom. It landed her into some pretty dark experiences. And she really helped us see behind the veil of assumptions or judgment or perceptions of what, like, why do they do that? Why don't they just go get help? She let you hear what it's like. And if you missed those, please go back and listen. Very, very, very powerful. She's so articulate and eloquent and brave to just openly share her story. And she does so because she's passionate about helping someone. And if her story helps one person, then it will have been worth it to her. So anyway, today's episode's not about that. But I'm continuing my 10 hardest things that I've had to face in my life. And it sounds like, why in the world? Like, that's depressing. I talked about my brother's suicide. I talked about my divorce when I was in my 20s. I talked about, my parents and taking care of our parents while raising children and kind of getting sandwiched, and what our elder population needs from us, and how I was kind of learning on the fly. Anyway, I went through some of the 10 hardest things I've ever done. And actually, a lot of those I was doing in multiple layers. And honestly, I look back sometimes 20 years ago at who I was. I'm so not the same person, but I didn't become bitter and shut down. I didn't become angry and why me? As a matter of fact, I was determined to be the opposite. And I let every single one of those experiences be one of the hardest things and best things I ever went through, because it made me who I am today. And that's really the point of sharing it. I don't really need sympathy or want people to go, wow, look at her. Like, how'd she get through all that? It's really not that. It's that, you guys, life is going to throw those curveballs. Life is unpredictable. Life is going to have loss. It's built in. It's the system. It's the universal law of polarity pressing down into our energy field. So it's just part of the way the universe operates. It's part of what brings order, is to have the polarity. But most of all, it's so our soul can heal. Our soul came here to experience things and heal from our childhood, from even young adulthood, from all these hard things that we went through, it wants to heal. Through that polarity, it expands. And that's actually how, gosh, that's how evolution happens. Evolution isn't stagnant, right? Like evolution means that we're growing and expanding. And so all of this is a really important thing to think about when you look at your hardest thing you ever went through. And almost every single person that I could find an interview on a podcast or otherwise would tell you a lot of who they are today was because of the hardship that they encountered. It refines us and it creates us. If we want it to create us into a victim, it will. And we get to repeat that over and over. Or if we want it to create us into someone who's strong and wise because they squeezed all the wisdom and growth they could out of that experience, then they'll get more opportunities for that too. So, yeah, I could go on and on about that. We're going to start talking about universal law. And I just mentioned the law of polarity. We'll be doing an episode about it. It is one of my favorite ones to look at because it just helps us get out of resistance and get into moving forward. And when we go into resistance, what happens? It persists. So a lot of what I'm telling you is my stories and what they taught me and how they've led me into the way that I coach, what I want to share with all of you in hopes that if you hear this and you know someone else going through it, you'll share the episode. This might not pertain to you. Today's topic might not pertain to you at all, but it might make you think, and it might make you have more compassion, and it might make you want to know more about it. All of these episodes are for our growth, not just our healing. So I hope that you're enjoying this series. I hope it doesn't sound like a big, long string of victim pearls or something. So yeah, I'm in one piece. I've walked through hot coals, you guys. I walked across the hot coals. And the thing about them is that you just got to keep walking. If you stand still, it gets worse. And that's what I'm here to help people do, to keep moving forward, but to come out on the other side victorious. And define what that means. Define what, do I get what I want? Is that what I mean by victorious? Absolutely not. I haven't gotten what I want out of a lot of these hard things. Not at all. But what I can tell you is that I got something that was of value to me and to others. And that's our job, is to figure out, what is it? What is this teaching me? And as soon as you learn how to step out of the question, why is this happening to me? And into the question or into the experience of, this is life happening through me. And this is my lesson happening for me so that I can learn and grow and transform, then you are winning. You are winning in the game of life. Well, let's talk about today's episode. If you're here, it's probably because there's something about today's episode that tweaked your interest. I had never heard of such a thing ever in my lifetime until it happened to me. And it's now, I want to say 13, maybe 14 years ago. I have to stop and really start adding up those years, right? It's 13 years ago, I think. I was at my son's wedding in Texas, and it was a beautiful wedding. It was a family weekend for everyone. It was the best. I mean, it was beautiful. The weather was beautiful. The people were beautiful. The ceremony was beautiful. The love was beautiful. And everyone was having a really grand time. And at the end of the day, my daughter came over to say goodbye and had my grandson, who was my first my first grandchild. And he and I actually bonded a lot in his early first 6 months of life. At some point, they lived with us. And so he became a part of our world for a little while, even though at the time my world was falling apart. He brought a lot of joy to me. Talk about polarity. I had a son struggling with addiction, and I had a dad dying of cancer, all in the same household. And this little sweet little boy, just was the one thing that made me smile. At the end of the day, his golden colored curls all over his head. And just, I can still, he's still that age to me. Little do I know that now he's 16. So last I saw him, I think it was 3 at the wedding. And so after that ceremony, the littlest one, who I didn't get to know very much, he was 8 months old. I had only seen him one other time when he was 8 weeks old, I think. And he also, was at the wedding, but he had not been feeling well. We were trying to figure out what to do for him. And the same time the wedding was starting. And so it was a little bit crazy there for a minute. But at the end of the day, I said goodbye to both of them, said goodbye to my daughter. But actually, before I could finish saying goodbye, one of her brothers, my other son, had picked the kids up and was throwing them over their shoulders. It was just, it was family. It was fun. And then they were gone. And I didn't really get to say goodbye to my daughter or anything. And they were headed back home the next day. So I wouldn't see them again. And it felt a little bit weird that they just suddenly disappeared. But all I could think of is that it's 2 kids and it's late and they need to go to bed and they don't need a meltdown. And she probably just had to scurry away. But here I am 13 years later, and there's been zero communication since then. I called once we got back home and see if they got home and to check on the little one's condition, if he had, was sick or if he was feeling better, and left messages and sent emails and sent texts, and just noticed pretty much by the end of the first week that there was a problem because there was no response no matter what I did. And I continued for a while trying. I respected the silence for a while, and it's still hard for me right now to talk about that. Those first months and years into this estrangement between her and I, and not just her and I, but her family, her husband, her children, were all gone out of our lives. And I say our lives, but specifically my life and certainly my husband's life. And so she's my only daughter. And that played out all the way through these 13 years. So many times when I thought that that's who I would lean on, that would be my person. And I had to grieve that, whether she ever is or not, whether we're ever reunited or not. I had to go ahead and accept that reality. And it took me about 5 years. Therapy of grieving. Meanwhile, I, lost my father. I was taking care of my mom. My mother-in-law went through stuff, and I was having to see her through end of life. And it was a lot going on. That's what these hard things are all about. This one was particularly hard because I was going through hard things, but I didn't have her. I didn't have them. And I just had no answers. So, yeah, today's episode, estrangement. And it's coming from a place that's still tender even now. And you can probably hear it in my voice. And I'm going to try to just keep talking my way through this. But it becomes this quiet, aching space between a parent and a child where love is still there and contact is not. And if you've ever walked through the grief of being disconnected from your child when your child hasn't passed away, or if you've left someone who's been through it, you know it's not like any other kind of loss. When her dad and I got divorced and she was only 3.5 years old, I remember saying that divorce was harder than death. I didn't have a lot of experience yet with losing people, but that divorce was hard because the person still was there and you had to change your identity with that person. You had to become the ex. You had to become somebody that was once your most intimate partner in life, now became a distant contact. And that was hard. So when I went through this estrangement, it felt very much like that. Like this, this being that made me a mom. She was my firstborn, right? We had so many experiences in my mind of her childhood that brought so much joy to my heart that this was hard to comprehend. So it's like a loss without a funeral, or a heartbreak with no clear ending, or a silence that just goes on and on. And for many parents, this kind of separation triggers every layer of the grief cycle, just like every one of them: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. I don't remember all of them, but you do them all the same way with estrangement. And eventually you get to acceptance. And that acceptance took me a really long time. I think, as I said earlier, like 5 years, writing letters saying, I wish you would forgive me. And I'm going to ask you to forgive me for not even knowing what I need forgiven for, because I don't have answers. I was so not a perfect parent. And let me tell you, and I will in this episode, things that I've come to know, things that I've come to realize about myself, about the way that I parented, the way that I kind of lived my life through her in so many ways, that I didn't have good boundaries. We were very enmeshed at times. We were each other's best friend. We were inseparable. And I was up in her business all the time. And I was very controlling about it, in the nicest of ways, of course, but still, I was not a perfect mom. And I know that could contribute to where we got to. I do know that. And I'm going to tell you some more things that I've come to know as I came to the end of the grief and into the period of learning how to just accept what was. And that acceptance came through spiritual law, through the understanding that there has to be deeper truths that govern any of our human pain. When I mentioned the law of polarity, there are all these universal laws, and we're going to be talking more and more about it. And I have more information to share with you later, but I'm integrating it into how I got through this and how I want you to learn a few of these. But right now, we'll talk about the law of relativity and the law of neutrality, because those two universal laws became bridges that carried me from grief into peace. So let's pause for a minute. I'll not talk about me so much, but I want to talk about the reality of estrangement. I guess I am going to tell you a little bit more about me. I grew up with two parents that family was everything. I only remember one real vacation where we went to a beach, and even then, my mom's sister and her family, so my cousins, they went too. We did everything with family. My cousins were really close to me. I cared deeply for them. When we went anywhere, it was to visit an aunt or an uncle or grandparents when I was really young. And that's how we did life. And we didn't know estrangement. I could no more have walked out of my parents' life, nor would I have ever wanted to. And I want to comment on that because that's also an important piece of this. I loved spending time with my parents, so much so that we made an in-law suite for them and moved into the house, made it into an in-law suite. And they moved in with us and spent the rest of their lives with us. And it was the greatest honor to spend that time with them and have them around 24/7. They were fun and funny and caring and kind and uplifting and honest and wise. And oh my goodness, to have that available to me was like, I wouldn't have traded it. So of course, when this happened with my daughter, I felt that I had failed in the worst of ways. I felt that I wasn't that. Like, I know my parents held a high bar and I was trying to reach it, but I concluded that I failed. I failed her. I failed myself. I failed my other children. So what happened? When did this estrangement from parent thing start? So let's look at that. Recent studies show that nearly 1 in 4 Americans are estranged from at least one family member. And in the US, about 11% of mothers report being estranged from an adult child. And children, and this was interesting, are more likely to be estranged from their fathers. 1 in 4 say they've had a period of time when they were estranged from their father. The average age that adult children step away is in their mid-20s. And it's a time when they're actually forming their own identity, their values, and autonomy. And while the reasons for that vary, research says some really common themes. Many adult children say the decision wasn't like, I want to punish my parents. It was about self-protection. They would often describe it like this: I didn't stop loving my parents. I just stopped being able to keep being hurt by them. Or it wasn't one big fight. It was death by 1,000 small cuts. And you guys, that is hard to hear as a parent. It is. I wondered what happened. 1 minute, we're at a family wedding, having fun, feeling good about things, and the next, we're estranged indefinitely. And I had no big fight. There wasn't a thing to blame it on or to mark the before and after of, except my son and daughter-in-law's beautiful wedding. And that became the thing. So when I stopped making it about me and I started looking at what are the 1,000 small cuts, and man, over the course of, a couple decades or more, I'm sure there were 1,000 small cuts. I could say things that I shouldn't have. I could get stressed. I could neglect. I could forget. I could not prioritize them. I'm sure there were 1,000 small cuts easily. So that's what they needed. They needed distance from emotional control or even my criticism. I was also a perfectionist, and I held a high bar of perfectionism with my kids, which I regret. I understand now and see the error of my ways, but, too bad for me that I had to wait till, it was too late. Other people say that they never felt seen, or that if they tried to set boundaries, they weren't respected. And I also learned at the beginning of this season of my life, when I went through all these hard things, is that I didn't have boundaries if I thought I was going to lose connection. So I used control to hold on to people and ended up squeezing the life out of them. My whole woundedness wanted to not lose connection. And that's pretty tough if you've got a mom that is controlling and has no boundaries, and her MO is, I just need to keep everybody here so I have connection, how do you gain your autonomy? How do you know your values from mine? How would they ever really know their own identity? So it can happen even when it feels like everything was good and that you were a good and loving parent. Almost 70% of the people surveyed still think about a reconciliation, but only if the relationship could become emotionally safe and mutually safe. Hearing those words, safe and mutual, what does that do? What do you do with those words? If you think of yourself, was I safe and was that mutual? I know, because I'm a mother, how deeply we want to be understood. And yet sometimes we're the ones being asked to understand. So before I go too much further, I want to be pretty transparent here. Allie, my daughter, is the firstborn, first grandchildren, the only girl in the family. She got 4 little brothers to put up with when she was growing up. The youngest of our children was the one that was 13 years separating our first to him. And my husband and I kind of boasted in the fact that he was so good. He was such a good kid. And he became this grown-up, really good human. His soul still is this beautiful soul that is kind and caring and compassionate and generous and just a good human. And we kind of pat ourselves on the back and thought we messed up with the others. We did. We started seeing all our mistakes long before they left the nest. And by the time we started working on them, it started to improve. And we thought, wow, maybe we got it right with him. But he became what my husband and I would probably tell someone else, a lost child. He never really got an identity solidified outside of our view of him to a point that he understood and knew how to not just, he knew his values, but I think he had to go away to figure out how to stand for them and not be molded into something else through friendships or relationships. He too is estranged from our family. And that had a whole different story and scenario that I won't go into, but we have, out of 5 children, 2, the first and last, are exercising estrangements. He said things like, blood doesn't define family. I couldn't even understand when he said that. I want to understand what you're saying. And he's wanting to be understood, but I didn't understand. I grew up different. I grew up where, blood or not, family, whether by marriage, whether by adoption, we loved all of them and we showed up for each other. It's our tribe. That's what it meant to me. I didn't understand him. I don't think he understood me in our last conversation. I do know that he desperately did want me to understand something, and I didn't. So it's complicated. It is complicated. How could I have been safe for him? How can we make that mutual? With both of him and the older one, we went through some really bumpy times. And in those bumpy times, I will tell you that it was not safe for me to be in a relationship with either of them in the way that I became the target, the number one target to place blame. And while I'm always willing to pick up my responsibility for things, how that gets communicated is a whole different story. And we'll talk about that on another podcast. But this is going back to just how do you get through it? For parents, which is the only perspective that I genuinely, authentically can talk about, estrangement brings a kind of invisible grief. Psychologists out there call it ambiguous loss. There's no closure, no final goodbye, no real certainty. We wake up every day not knowing whether to hold on for another day or to let go. I remember the day that I realized I have to stop waiting for this phone to ring. I have to stop waiting for a text to be read or returned. I've got to stop waiting for this to get better so that I could be better, because that was my codependency. I had to give myself permission to say I get to live a full life no matter what. That's my decision. I get to live with joy every day. That's my decision or choice. I get to love unconditionally. And that means that, I have to love their silence. I have to respect and love that right now they're doing what they need to do. Do I like it? No, I don't have to, but does it have to stop me from living? No, it doesn't. That's a hard choice, you guys. If you're in this with me, it's not easy to let go. It feels like sometimes letting go was abandoning them. But when you start trusting that higher order of love, whatever is your higher order of love, you start trusting that will surpass any and all understanding. It'll take you beyond what is happening and remind you, you still get to love them. And I know with certainty, I do know this, that when I think of either of those two that I don't get to see or hear from or talk to, there is a message of hope. There's a message that in our higher consciousness connects to them. They hear it. They see something. They remember a childhood memory. Maybe they're even mad at me in that moment, but we cross each other's hearts, whether they're conscious of it or not. So I began talking to them in the higher consciousness, in the higher order of love. And I began telling them things like, you know what? I respect that this is what you're doing and that you have a good reason for it. And I love you unconditionally, whether you are in my life or not. You don't get to take that part away from me. It is the only thing I really have that's real is my love for my children. And I won't let anyone do anything to stop that. And if you've ever questioned the power of a mother's love in this world, man, it's a force. It's a force of nature. So I pour love into these estranged relationships every day through prayer, every day through thoughts, words, and deeds. And even by doing this podcast to help others understand what's possible and how much easier it is to navigate once you let go. And letting go is not abandoning them. So what I just shared was the shift that happened that set me free. Took me a long time with my daughter. By the time my son came along, I had pretty much mastered this one. And it didn't take long at all for me to just shift the meaning of what was happening. That brings in the universal law of relativity. If you don't know it, you can look it up, but I'll be talking more about it. But through the law of relativity, it teaches us that nothing has meaning. Everything's neutral until we compare it to something else or we put meaning on it. For example, my daughter is estranged from me for going on, 14 or 15 years. That's neutral. as much as it doesn't sound that way. It really is. Because it could mean that my daughter needed space to form her identity, to find her values, to create a strong and powerful young woman who knows who she is and what she stands for in life without being in the shadow or the watchful eye of her mom. She would never have experienced that had she not stepped away the way that she did. I would like to believe that if she re-entered my life right now, she would experience that because I've done so much work to heal it. But she would have also had to have done the work on her end to trust it. But I can also put meaning on it that says, because of this, I'm a terrible person. I was a horrible mom. I've done things unforgivable. God gave me the most beautiful gift of my daughter. I go back to the day that I first watched her take her first breath, when I first held her on my chest, when I first knew that I had a daughter. I can shut my eyes and be in that moment right now. And I am so filled with joy. And I can stay there, or I can assign meaning that says God granted me a gift and I let her down. I disappointed her and God. And that could throw me into a shame cycle that would be really hard to spin out of. Well, it actually did, which is why it took every day for 5 years, because I applied that meaning to it. The law of relativity teaches us not to do that. It's to remember the feelings. It's to go, I will honor the feelings of sadness, of anger, of grief. I'm going to honor the feelings that I'm having, but I'm not going to make up a story about what those feelings mean, because that is my punishment. I will self-punish myself for the rest of my life. And I chose not to. You might, and that might be your choice, and there's no wrong way to do this. But what I want to invite you to consider is move on. Make yourself the best version of yourself that you can, so that if there is a reunification, they will feel and see only love from you. And if you don't have that capacity, it's your work. It is your work. But I will tell you that if you assign those stories, if you think of all the people that have their kids coming by to visit, grandchildren coming and spending holidays, or people sitting around the Thanksgiving table that are not traditionally there because you're estranged, and you start comparing it to what other families have, your pain will deepen. If you compare it, you'll feel you've lost something, because you have. You might feel unworthy. You might feel that you failed at the most sacred role of all, as I did. And at some point, you have to stop and ask yourself, what if this isn't a punishment? What if this is a lesson I'm learning about unconditional love? And through the law of relativity, I realized that my suffering came from the story I was telling about what happened. And my suffering came from some of the hurtful things that both of them said to me in their moment of suffering. But when I shifted and thought, maybe this estrangement didn't mean that I was a horrible mother, or that they didn't love me, or the love we had together has ended. What if I could change the meaning, and that could change my reality? And I began to see the separation as more like, this is their soul contract with me. They both agreed in their soul to come and be in this chapter of my life and their life, maybe because they needed distance in order to find their own truth, and maybe my soul needed distance to find mine. And honestly, if all of them just stayed in my little controlled bubble of family love, none of us would know our truth. None of us would have a chance to live in our values and be independent. not codependent, interdependent, where we know ourselves, we know what we stand for. We don't have to all be clones of each other. Heaven knows we can be different. We can have different religious views. We can have different political views and still come together as a family, knowing our own truth and respecting each other's. So the moment I stopped comparing and began observing, which I was only observing myself and the silence, I began to feel peace. And it was much needed. It was much needed. So the law of neutrality teaches that all energy is neutral until we give it charge. Our emotions, whether it's love or anger, guilt or fear or joy, they color these neutral events with meaning. So when I first started this estrangement journey, I lived in extremes. Like one moment I would catch myself just blaming myself, and the next I'd be mad at them. One day I would want to reach out, and the next I vowed I never would again. My emotions were the pendulum swinging between hope and despair. Neutrality taught me to step into the still point, the center, to see both sides without judgment, to hold compassion for myself and hold compassion for them. It didn't mean that I stopped caring. It meant I stopped bleeding energy into something, guess what, I couldn't control. And as a recovering control freak, I can tell you that I had to have these experiences as part of the polarity, right? If I wanted control, I would get all kinds of things that I couldn't control. That's just how life works. That's the polarity. And that's when grace enters. Because in that neutrality, there's room for the divine intelligence to do its work, to heal us in ways that, oh my goodness, we can't even see. Sometimes love needs silence to teach us what words never could. And let me tell you, I'm in the masterclass of silence over here. I don't know if I'll ever graduate, but I have taken it on. And I will tell you that I am grateful. I'm grateful for these experiences. Would I like reconciliation? Would I like us to have a reunion with each other? Would I like us to introduce ourselves to each other? Because I'm sure by now their growth is just as strong. I would hope so. I know that if that day ever comes, I want them to look at me without words, know, see my growth, know my growth, feel my growth. I want them to feel safe. I want to feel safe with them. It's such an important thing. And really and truly, boundaries are the key to what that safety looks like. We're living in a time when adult children are more conscious of emotional health than ever before. Social media has normalized phrases like no contact and low contact, and what used to be seen as rebellion is now often seen as healing. Many of them aren't trying to be cruel. They're trying to survive, to stop cycles of trauma, and to protect their peace. And that awareness, while it might be painful for us parents to hear, it's also evidence of a collective awakening. If you don't know by now, humanity is learning new ways to love, ways that sometimes begin in separation. And that's where our spiritual work begins. To love them and not possess them. To bless them without needing their approval or presence in return. To hold space for their journey, even if we aren't a part of it for now. So, grief, this unusual type of grief. Grief is nothing more than energy, and it moves in waves. When I stopped resisting the sadness, it began to teach me. Every tear became like a baptism. It was like I just felt them washing away my attachment and my fear and my guilt. And in that space, I learned that love isn't measured by proximity. It doesn't matter if they're in my life or not. Love is measured by presence, and it can exist, as I said earlier, across any distance they create. Now, I'll be honest, sometimes I still ache. Sometimes I wake from a dream where we were together again in my dream, and I realize that wasn't more than a dream in my subconscious. Or was it? I don't assume I know anything, you guys. I wake up and then I think it was just a dream and I feel sad. And then I asked, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe that's our way of finding each other in that safety where we can laugh again, where we can hug goodbye and we can say, I love you at the end of a phone call or text. And now that ache, it just feels sacred. It reminds me that it's a prayer. It's a reminder that my heart is still wide open and I won't let anyone harden my heart to where I can't be open to love, because I am here to be unconditional love. I didn't get it right as a mother, but I certainly am still here. And I want to always say that I will always love unconditionally. And that doesn't mean what I thought it meant for a long time. Unconditional love gave me permission to not have boundaries, and that's not how that works. I get to have boundaries, and I get to still love unconditionally. So if you're listening to this today and you're living through estrangement, I want you to know something. One, you're not alone. There is way more of this going on than ever before. And this doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning. In divine time, every relationship returns to harmony, sometimes on this plane, sometimes on another. What matters most is that vibration that you hold right now, that vibration of love. And as you release judgment by exercising the law of neutrality, and you reframe the meaning through the law of relativity, you actually raise your frequency, and you can raise it all the way to the unconditional love. And then from that space, miracles unfold. Maybe a reconciliation. Maybe it's the gift of just experiencing inner peace. And always, no matter what the story is, when you put the law of neutrality with the law of relativity, you create healing for yourself and others. And so as we close today, I just invite you to take a deep breath, place your hand on your heart, and just whisper to yourself, I'm willing to see this through the eyes of love. Let's just take a deep breath. It's a lot, you guys. We are here living a masterclass of life. When I wrote down my 10 hardest things, I was like, man, I came here to play big. I experienced so many things in my adult life that I came to play big. I want to be in the major league of life. That's how I reframed it. I'm not here to be the biggest victim ever. I'm not here to compare my stories to other people's stories. Because of that law of neutrality and the law of relativity, I reframe. I choose to look at it through the lens of, if I'm going to place meaning on a story, it's going to raise my vibrational frequency because my health depends on it. My peace of mind depends on it. Heck, my relationships, my career, my money, my passion, my purpose, everything is lumped into how I choose to look at life. That is the power. That is the point. We have a choice. We have the choice, you guys. Exercise that option for your own good, not to get anything from anyone else. Because guess what? The only control we have is ourself. And so just know that right now you know somebody else, at least, walking that same path. I'm with you. If you know somebody else, share this episode with them and remind them there's hope, there's healing, and there's peace waiting on the other side of this pain. And when both parties realize that, it will heal. It will heal. It will look different. It won't go back to where it was before if you do your work. If you don't, and you still have unhealed, scripts playing back there in the back of your head about how you're not worthy of it and how you're still angry about it, then you're going to slip up and it's going to go back to the way it was. And that's no good for anybody. So do your work. But you don't have to fix the relationship that looks broken, but it's really divinely in place. All you need to do is stay in the energy of love long enough that you can let grace do what you cannot. And say that again. Don't stay in the energy of victimhood. Don't stay in the energy of anger or why are they doing this to me, or that it's punishment or shame because you know why they're doing it. Let it all go. Get that cleared. Do the work. You have to actually do the work. You can't just decide it. You have to viscerally release it. And then you only need to stay in the energy of love long enough that grace can do what you cannot. If you need support, remember you're not alone. I'm here. There's communities and professionals who actually understand estrangement grief. It is unique, and there are people out there that know how to help. I am not a therapist, as I've told you on other episodes, but I am in a coaching program that is a practitioner program. And what we do is a really, really powerful way to work our way through all this through E4 trauma, E4 upset, E4. It's taking a specific process and is very effective. So if you find a spiritual psychology practitioner who's certified and trained, reach out. Let them help you. Let me help you, because I want you to know separation doesn't end love. There is no separation with love. It just transforms it. And as we rise in our understanding, we bring every relationship we have closer to its higher truth. I hope I've given you some things to think about, and I hope that you will take it to heart. And I hope you'll reach out and let me know what your thoughts are. And if you need some coaching around this, or you're ready to go into a coaching program to really heal and let this help you rise into your highest truth, I am 100% with you. I'm 100% with you. That is what lights me up, is helping people get to the other side of these very hard things in life. If you've enjoyed this episode, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for leaving a review. It's a little podcast, but through each of you, by sharing it, liking it, doing whatever you do to do a review, it helps us grow. And I really, really, really appreciate you being here and listening, even if it's just to help understand me or someone you know going through this, and you have the blessing of not experiencing it. You might want to learn or glean from the blessing of those of us who are, because there are blessings to all of it for everyone. So if you are interested, you can go to the show notes. There's a link there. It'll take you to my website or it takes you somewhere magical that my assistant who does technology takes you to, where there is a lot of meditations. There's one that is finding peace in the space between us, finding peace in the silence between us. It's a meditation for this very topic. And you are welcome to have that. Download it, listen to it. It is yours for free as my gift to you. And I thank you for being here and being part of this episode. Take care. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart. And I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help, because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself, and do so with love.